Hi, Eleanor. Welcome to the Women Waken podcast.
Hello. Hi, Whitney. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being on the show. I'm so glad that we were connected and had a chance to chat and share our love for all things travel and the power of travel and the benefits of travel.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's amazing to find connection with other sister travelers.
Yes. And that's what you were all about. And that's what I
Yeah.
love is
Yeah.
you are all about women really stepping into their personal power, but also their true authentic self and doing that by means of traveling and kind of finding their place in the world.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think it's been a long journey to get here, but I've always had this love for new places and new experiences and new adventures. And that's just translated recently into some fairly extensive travel. But the concepts underlying that of, independence and freedom and adventure are all things that I really value. I feel very passionate about.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of passions, Eleanor, because I know so and you speaking of travel, you're living abroad. Well, to me it's abroad, but I believe you are from the States originally. Is that correct? Or you're born in Jamaica?
I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, but grew up in the US since
Okay.
the age of 3, upstate New York, then California. Most of all of my adult life was in California after school. But I've been in Lisbon, Portugal for 3+ years now.
Oh, wow. 3 years.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a while. It's
And
home.
it feels like home. Do you think you'll stay
Yeah.
there for the long term or is it a
Yeah, I would like to. I do have a job in the United States, so
oh, what's your
uh,
job in the States?
I'm a law professor at Golden Gate University in San Francisco, California. I
Oh,
am
okay.
on an extended leave, sabbatical, and I will be going back. I actually will be back in the Bay soon,
Oh, to move
soonish,
or just to travel to go visit for a while?
to teach, to go back to teach.
Oh, so what
Yeah,
are you going to relocate back to San Francisco?
I have a home here, so home is here, so I'll be going back to teach, but we'll see. I'm not being cagey on purpose. I don't know
You're like, I
what
don't
the
even know
future.
what's going to happen. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
what an exciting life then. I mean,
Yeah.
it's my kind of lifestyle. We are fellow travelers. I currently
Yeah.
am in my friend's attic, or yeah, the studio above a garage, and staying in her place in Seattle on
Yeah.
a road trip I'm doing, which is the second part of a road
Yeah.
trip in the past year. I was traveling, for about 3 months across the country back in last October through January. So lots of traveling, lots of
Mhm.
kind of letting things guide you and see where you end up.
Well, that's exactly what it is. I think before I used to be a 5-year plan, 1 year, 3 year, 5-year plan kind of person. And now I'm a let's take this day by day.
Yeah,
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 I don't know about you, but I get a lot of questions about, what's your 5-year plan or what do you plan to do in 10 years? And I'm like, how about we talk about what's happening this week?
and how wonderful is that?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would
I feel
love
it
how
more, it's more freeing.
yeah, it's more freeing, but it's also, there is we tend to have this mindset and have this pressure on ourselves, on others of, well, but what are you doing? What are you going to do next?
Exactly.
What is this leading towards? And we don't really know how to conceptualize what it means to just be on your just following your path, being with the flow, seeing what
It's
comes.
true. Yeah,
And
it's
it is
true.
a balance, right? Because we both have things going on. We're not just drifting through and traveling from here to
Yeah,
there. We both
yeah.
have jobs that allow us to work virtually sometimes and
Mhm.
travel, and what a beautiful thing that is. Very grateful
Yeah.
for that. um but it also keeps us open to being able to take opportunities that come. I know you said you're going to be traveling again soon.
Yes, yes, yes. I leave. I just came back from Istanbul, and I will be leaving on Friday for Cape Town, South Africa. So it's a bit of a whirlwind, but
You have a
wonderful.
travel blog, Eleanor? Do we get to see your pictures? Are you on social
I
media?
I do, I'm kind of less on social media these days. I've taken a big step back. I have an IG account, but it is private, and I don't check in so much. But I do have a travel blog. It's called Somewhere Over the Tagus, the river here in Lisbon, that
Oh.
I post to kind of infrequently. But I'm taking pictures and I plan to write it up. I'm working on
Yeah.
a project where I sort of talk about all of the ins and outs of these various adventures.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's another interesting component of sort of modern life is I was off social media for 10 years. After
Mm,
2012, I got off of it and I just got back on this year. And it's very freeing to not share your life and to not, because here's the thing that I find when you travel and you know that you want to share it, it does
yeah,
take you a bit out of the moment because my first trip last year, I wasn't sharing anything. And so I was just totally present and wasn't thinking about anything else. But now that I've chosen to share my journeys, I'm always thinking like, would this make a good post? Would this be cool to, oh, this will be so great. And it makes you
that's
a
true.
little bit removed, but you do get to share with others.
Yeah,
And I know that I appreciate people who share their travels and their experiences because it's like, oh wow, that's so cool. I've never seen that
yeah,
before. I've never been to Paris. I've never been here. And now I'm seeing this. But it is a trade-off. It's an interesting trade-off of when we are travelers and see the benefits of travel, we want to share it, but we also want to have that sacred experience of being in the moment within our travels.
yes. And for me, it's the thing is that I think that sometimes social media can present a view that is not balanced. And so the reason I stepped away is because I felt that I was sharing all the positive things, and it was really hard for the things that were more challenging. Like we've had some serious deaths in our family, like tragedies and
Oh,
suffering. And it's hard for me to share that stuff broadly. And so I felt like I didn't want to, I felt like a lie to be posting these great things and not actually also
yeah.
saying, well, actually, the day before this, we were on the floor.
Yeah.
So that's been something that I've been sort of struggling with. I really want to be honest about both the positives and the challenges of
Yeah.
being abroad, being in a new place, calling a new place home, being on the road. And so I haven't figured out that balance exactly yet. But so
Yeah.
I've my temporary solution is to pop in rarely and pop out. So it's
Yeah.
not great, but
Yeah. I hear you. And it is, you can share the ups and the downs, right? I think people
yeah,
appreciate candidness almost as much as a pretty picture of a mountain is when you say, and
sure.
today I had a total breakdown and couldn't
Yeah,
leave the house. But
yeah,
then it's up to you whether or not you want to put that out there because that takes your
yeah.
energy too to open and share. And I think it is a work in progress to find that balance and to kind of open yourself to sharing your life, to sharing your
Yeah.
experiences and deciding what is comfortable for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Working on
Yeah.
it.
So Eleanor, you living in Lisbon, you're sort of you're building this, the No Sister Stands Alone. You're kind of opening it's maybe in like a connecting phase where you're connecting with other women, you're sharing your ideas, which I think we're also in that same stage because we met in a networking group for women
Yeah,
entrepreneurs who are sort
yeah,
of more spiritual based.
yeah.
Your travel is a lot about travel is transformation, right? So your work in
Hmm.
travel is about how travel can be transformative and help us to
Yeah.
really find our authentic self, to face challenges and grow from them, and
Hmm.
also just to really meet new friends and
Community, to find
make
community.
a
Hmm.
community and find your particular place, which I'd love to
Right.
talk about because I'm on that journey now.
Yes.
I'm on this road trip right now because I've been sort of scouting the country for where I'd actually like to make roots.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that exploration and discovery is, it's extensive and challenging, but it has wonderful rewards. But it helps to find other people who understand that and to, because sometimes you feel like you're out there on your own and maybe kind of
Yeah.
aimless when you're
Yeah.
traveling a lot. It can be
Hmm.
lonely. But when you
Hmm.
hear other people share that, I've been on that journey too for these reasons, it helps you
Hmm.
remember, oh, that it kind of grounds you in a purpose and a
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that since I moved, I've met so many people, not just women and men, who are on their own individual crazy journeys abroad. They have taken the road less traveled, and they're doing really, really wonderful things, or unique, you know, they're following their own unique passions, and
Mm.
it's been eye-opening. And like you said, it's less, you don't feel lonely when you're doing your own thing, and then you hear, oh, there's this person who's in Ireland, and like I just met this woman who, it's someone through a friend of a friend. People connect me all the time, like, here, you should meet this person. This person is in Ireland, and she's an astrocartographist, and she tells women, how to, where they should live
Where
in
they
their
should
lives.
go. I just work with an astrocartographer.
Maybe it's the same woman.
Is her name Renee?
I don't remember. We spoke a couple of weeks ago. She's in Scotland, I think. The person you spoke to in Scotland. So I had never heard of what she was doing. It was really interesting, and we're going to find ways to connect in the future. And so these sort of drawing these new connections is sort of, I love it. It's kind of wonderful, and well beyond the legal field that I have traditionally been in.
Yeah, so I'd love to explore that, because what an interesting sort of juxtaposition to be in law, but then to be pursuing something that's more about sort of personal growth and evolution. So what led you to this work, to this focus on travel as transformation?
I think that I have always loved travel. When I was a first year in law school, I went to NYU, and I remember in the spring, I took off. I took off for Spain for a week. I think this is right. I might have the timing off, to go do something called willing workers on organic farms, which I kind of barely knew anything about. I showed up in the middle of southern Spain, and I just have always had this sort of travel bug. So travel has always kind of been in the background. But then when I was teaching, I've been teaching for more than 10 years, and I was spending my summers in other places, because we have 2.5 months off during the summer, and it just reinforced the fact that there are other ways to live, other places to live that are really interesting. I spent a summer in Toronto and London. I was like, this is fantastic. And I remember when I was in Lisbon, one of the summers that I was in Lisbon, I started coming here in 2016. And one of the summers that I was here, I was thinking about, what would it be like to teach over here, over in Europe? And I think, like, also, there was a question about whether I would still have a job at home as well. So that probably helped to open my eyes to other possibilities. And one thing led to another, and it's really just sort of a combination of serendipity and sheer luck and blessing and favor from above. I mean, that there's just a combination of things that have led me to this path. I don't know that I can say it. It wasn't mapped out. I didn't say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to, all I knew is that I followed a desire. I knew that I'd wanted to live abroad kind of more permanently for a long time. And I'm kind of risk averse. So it took me a long time to kind of do what I'm doing. And now that I'm here, I'm like, well, this is fairly wonderful. So how are we gonna, so I'm building a community of travelers and adventurers and seekers who can support each other as we, pursue. They can be individual journeys, but as a journey, I don't think it should be done alone. I haven't been alone most recently, and it's helped a lot. But meeting other travelers who are in a similar boat, it's really hard for other people to understand what you're doing. I think some people think I'm crazy. I'm not grounded. I don't know what it is. But other people who are expats or immigrants, sort of there's some similarities in the experiences, the things that are tough or that are really tough. It's hard to share those with others without them having gone through it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why community is important. I was just meeting with a friend yesterday who also lives here in Seattle, he kind of picked up the lifestyle of, he started driving a truck, like a semi truck across the country, because you make good money during, he'd do like the summer months. And then during the winter, he'd use his money and go to South America and travel all down there. And that's become his lifestyle, because he loves the way of life down there. That's where he would be full time, but visas and stuff don't allow him to stay. But so he feels the same way, where he's like, I don't know most people don't understand me. They don't get this
Yeah.
lifestyle. They don't get, well, but where's your home and where's your
Yeah.
family? You're getting into
Yeah.
your 40s. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not living a standard life. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I desire change and travel and exploration, and not to knock, anybody who has a more standard
Right.
life or just wants
Right.
to, because,
It's
I
a choice.
don't know if
It's a
you ever
choice.
get there, but I do have my moments where I'm like, man, I'd love to have a home base. I mean, you have a home, you have your place there. I personally don't right now, but I've had both, right? I've been with home and without. And
Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing to be able to set your roots, but there's also something beautiful about exploring and being free, not
Yeah.
having a anything that you're tied to.
Yeah. I think there's definitely, for me, a need for balance. I don't travel in the same way. And actually, I haven't been traveling for the pandemic. I think we've all been grounded. So the travel that I've been doing is very recent. I didn't go anywhere for the full 3 years, and only this May I was in New York for a little bit, and then to Istanbul. But now I don't travel. Like, I don't want to go somewhere for 3 days and then pack up and move again. Like, if I'm not there for a good couple weeks, just to give yourself time to unpack and have a sense of place. And maybe that's a luxury, but with time and experience and being able to work remotely. But it's something that I try to do now, because of the reasons that you stated, that sometimes you really need, like, we have a home here, I built this home, blood, sweat, and tears,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so in your work, Eleanor, you work, it sounds like you're developing a coaching program almost for women who are looking to sort of break through maybe resistance, and different things to really get into this lifestyle of, facing challenges and reaching like their highest potential. Is that accurate?
So not necessarily coaching, or if you're going to think of it, like, I am not doing the coaching. I think of it as like a group support community more. So,
Yeah.
what I'm planning on doing is having salons, like virtual salons, wine and wisdom events, where I'll have someone who is currently in France, or splitting her life between France and the US. I'm thinking about someone in particular. But having that person talk about their experiences, and then I hear an echo. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. Having that person answer questions about how they made those choices. That's the idea.
That's the idea.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Freeze. There you are. I can hear you now.
Yeah.
I can hear you now.
You can? There's a delay.
Yeah, you're coming through. Yes, there's a delay. Oh, I heard you.
Yeah, you're coming through. Yes, there's a delay. Oh, I heard you. I think it broke.
Let's give it a second, because we can cut this out of the audio and the video if needed.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's my internet connection.
Yeah.
Or yours.
I think we're okay. I think I can hear you speaking. Your lips are moving.
Yours too. Okay.
We're back in business.
God, this virtual world is so weird. It's like, am I?
know.
But then we're back again. Okay, hi.
I know.
About these wine and wisdom things,
Yes.
which is beautiful. So the idea of like, hey, this lady found her place in Paris. She decided to go there. This is her home, and being able to talk to someone who maybe found that same place in like Oregon or Arizona is that kind of where it's like women who have sort of found their home and are able to share with others.
Yeah, and maybe they're still on the road, maybe they're still seeking, but the point is to share their motivations as well, and then the trials, the things that they found difficult in adjusting to on the road, and then having people be able to ask questions. So right now on the internet, you could go to Facebook, and there are any number of travel groups with people giving tips, and sharing their experiences. But there's something that it's really hard to replace having the ability to speak to someone live who is presently in that place and who will, answer your questions on the spot. Sometimes people get tired and there's like one line emails when it's online. So I just thought it would be really helpful to have something like that, because I know that when I first moved, I was not a novice traveler, but it was still really hard. It was still really difficult. The move, not traveling, the move itself. And I was fairly comfortable with being in Lisbon because I'd been coming for a long time, but it was still, there were still surprises.
Yeah.
So,
well, what were some of your biggest challenges for anyone who's considering, especially an international move? And, people are thinking of that more and more because, the market and, everything in the US is getting challenging. It's harder and harder to find places that are affordable and desirable to live.
Yeah. It's been a long time now, but I think some of the challenges are that you don't know what you don't know. So you go in thinking, okay, I am a capable person. I'm an experienced traveler. I can handle my life. I can handle travel. I can handle my life abroad. But when you move to a different culture, there are interactions that you might not be reading correctly. Of course, in a place that you speak, where you may or may not speak the language or may not speak it well, that interaction back home is going to be completely different, and you might be misreading the situation. And then just even trying to figure out how to get things done is challenging. And whether or not there's some things, this is something that I found out. Whether or not there's some steps that you took before you left will be fairly crucial in terms of setting up your communications and phone so that you can still be in touch and do your taxes and do all these other things on the road. Some of those things, they all have to be sorted out. So it's much different than when I was coming here just on vacation, for a couple of months at a time. You don't deal with any of that. When you're renting or, even Airbnb, you don't deal with any of that. But when you get yourself more immersed in a culture by buying a place or by buying a car, trying to do things, through the health system, all of those things, you get a crash course in living in a new culture with it can be wonderful. It is wonderful. But it's also, there's some days where you just want to you want everything to work like you're used to it working at home, but that's only because you've been at home forever and you're used to how things work at home. So yeah, I'm rambling, I'm sure, but
no, I'm following you, because it's that idea of familiarity that's hard to let go of. And when you go to a new place, everything is just, even if it's just a little bit different, it's like your picture frame like shifted, and it's like, this isn't quite it. And I don't, it takes a while to adjust to it and to get used to it. And there can be something really wearisome about it. Like, it's kind of exhausting to make those changes, because everything is like a learning curve. Like, okay, this is different here, and this doesn't work the same. And I can't just go to this familiar store that I know and this familiar place that I know to get the things that I always needed. And, I don't know if you experienced this, but a lot of times when I've moved or traveled, sometimes I'm like, I just want to go back to what I knew. I don't want to. And it's sort of that precipice before you kind of get over that hump. And then you're like, oh, now I've arrived. Like, it sounds like, because you said Lisbon is now home, but I imagine when you first got there, it did not feel like home. And were you in San Francisco before Lisbon?
Yes.
That's where you were before. So I'm sure there are times where you're like, oh my gosh, I just want the city again, the familiar city, the way I knew it, the infrastructure, all of that. And then everything changes, and it's challenging.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was here, I don't remember when Wonder Woman came out, the first new one.
Like the Gail Gadot.
Yes.
Okay. Is that like 2017 or something?
Yeah, I think it was before the pandemic, but I was in one of those moments where I don't remember.
You had a Superwoman moment?
No, I just had this moment where I went to go see it. That was my comfort zone, going to see it, because here they don't dub movies. So even though, I'd sort of moved beyond going to movies because there's so much to do here normally, it was like my safe zone. I'm like, I don't have to deal with all the things that you have to deal with when you move. I am just going to go sit in this movie theater and enjoy everything that is happening, the familiarity of the action film, blockbuster action film, over the top with a cold Coke and some popcorn, and I'm going to recalibrate in this movie theater.
Yeah.
Also the
Absolutely.
language, you're trying to learn the language, you're trying to speak the language, and so then your brain has got to work in a different speed. Your brain is not catching up to all the things that you're supposed to be saying and doing. It's
Yeah.
I just remember, I'm sure I saw that movie more than once. I mean, it was fun, but I don't know that at home I would have seen it more than once if I wasn't like, I just need a safe space.
Yeah, I totally get that. I studied abroad in Australia when I was in college. And although they do still speak English, it's still in a totally different country, continent. So you feel that,
Difference.
strong difference. And I used to go to the mall for the same reason, where I was like, okay, there's something about it that feels like comforting, because a mall kind of looks like it does back home. Everything in Australia is like the same, but just a little different. And so it's just to make you be like, this isn't home. This isn't like the underworld, well, literally it's like, the bottom of the world, but it just feels different, flipped upside down. And we need that comfort. And I do think it's not just in our mind, but your body kind of senses it. Your body kind of has this, your body too wants security, safety, and familiarity. And so when you go to a place where all that is just thrown out of whack, it feels like, oh, where's Superwoman and a theater? I need to get in there now. Get it.
Completely.
I hear you.
Completely. And the thing is that those moments are fleeting, right? You come to a great place like Lisbon and it's wonderful so much of the time. So you just have to get through those occasional moments where things don't go to plan, or it's harder than you expected, something to be. So it's not terrible. It's not something to complain about. You just have to realize I'm in this moment and I just have to breathe through it.
Yeah. Breathe through
Maybe
it
with a little creature of comfort.
It will pass. And, I had moments like that. So in 2019, before the pandemic, I did a trip to the UK, which is like visiting my heritage and ancestry, because my family's from Scotland, England, Ireland, and I'd never been there. And I felt this call. I was like, I think it's time. And I think maybe I had a premonition that like everything was going to get shut down and this was the time to travel before 2020. But I did a road trip by myself through Ireland, which is absolutely gorgeous. But it was very challenging. It's hard. You drive on the other side of the road, and I was in
the roads are small. You're like,
but there were other times, I remember this, there was one night where I almost burnt down my Airbnb. They use, what is it? The type of light bulbs will actually get hot. They don't have those here in the States anymore, but it's halogen or some type of light bulb that if you turn it on, it actually is hot. And I had like thrown my pillow while I was sleeping, and it landed on a light and it started burning through the pillow. And I woke up to like smoke and a smell. Anyway, so it was just like, and then the Airbnb person was kind of mad at me, and I was just tired. I'd been traveling to a different place every night on my own, and I just spent a whole day crying. I was just like, I was emotionally exhausted and tired, which happens when you travel. Travel is taxing. It's not just like vacationing. Vacation is when you're by a beach in Mexico and you're relaxing. But when you're actually traveling, it's you're expending a lot of energy and having a lot of, challenges come up.
Yeah, even driving, like you said, the driving on the other side of the road, but even just trying to get from point A to point B and following GPS, I understand that. I was with a friend when she moved to Ireland. I went to go see her in her first couple of weeks there, and our travels on the road were hilarious. Just trying to navigate the roundabouts, and it was really funny. We had a great time, but it was fairly hilarious.
Yeah. It's a trip. There's a lot of moving pieces and parts to make it all come together. Like right now, for example, so much of my days are spent, okay, where am I going next? What's going to be my route from here? Where am I going to stay? If I go here, well, then I go there. And it's a lot. And it is tiring to do that, and to pack up and pack out, when you're changing locations a lot, when you're doing that road trip or, traveling around a country, it's, it wears on you.
Yeah. But, at the same time, it's exhilarating too, because after you complete, a task, or you get yourself successfully to a place, you're like, like in Istanbul, we would look around and, after, figuring out which ferry to take and how to land somewhere, I would look around and be like, that is a mosque. And that is not something that is usually on my horizon. And that's beautiful. And this is history. History is all around me. And it was really incredible. So you take all of the challenges with the good
Oh,
too.
take it hand in hand, and that's the joy of it. But I think that's why there is a time and place for travel and for home, for a base, travel and base, because it's when it's all travel, it's, you know, I think it can be sort of, you're uprooted, right? You're kind of like floating around, and then you want to ground. So it's there's duality in everything. And I think the duality of travel is that it's so rewarding and eye-opening, but then it's also unfamiliar and challenging.
Yeah. That's true. I wonder, even, you know, when I'm back in the day, how it will feel. I'm sort of curious, because by now I'm used to being this, it feels like home, yes, but I'm also used to having to change, you know, fairly quickly, to adapt. And I just wonder, with COVID and you know, there's just been so much drama. What will it be like? Something that I'm curious about. I was back in New York in mid-May, and I had lived in Brooklyn back in the day, and it felt so good. I wasn't expecting it. I forgot. I love New York. I actually forgot. I was thinking it was going to be big and polluted and crazy, but it was energetic and fun, and Brooklyn's changed so much, and I loved it. So it'll be interesting, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then where do you see, I mean, we talked about just being in the moment and not
in the moment, no future plans.
But do you see yourself staying in Portugal for the long term, or do you think that this is a you know, a period, a chapter, and there's something next? Is your heart in Brooklyn? It sounds like you really fell in love with.
No, I do love it there, and I've got good friends there that I was like, I will be coming back here regularly, please. Yeah, Portugal, I really love it here, and I feel at home here. I feel most importantly, I feel safe here. I feel that I understand where the people are coming from here on a lot of things. Obviously, you know, I've only been here for 3 years, but their ways are very nice, many of their ways. And I really like it. And the place where we live is really nice. So yeah, I'm not forecasting, but I do not feel any need or desire to move somewhere else. Like, I want to see other places. I'm really excited to go to Cape Town. I loved Istanbul. When I was in Istanbul, I was like, well, maybe I should move to Turkey, but not really. But I did have a moment where I was like, this is unexpectedly wonderful. But it might have been just our circumstances and where we were. So I do sometimes have those feelings like, what if?
Well, it sounds like you make it happen sometimes, because a lot of people would never move across the world and go try to the country.
I think now where I am is I wouldn't do something like that unless I had some kind of network or burgeoning connection. Now I only really want to do it if I feel that there's going to be like a community that I can relate to, or people. And we have, after just a short summer, we have a family in Istanbul that basically took us in. I had a professional connection that turned into a family.
Wow.
We lived with that. Like, we call them and text them regularly. They're like, when are you coming back? We've already made plans to go back. Like, it's just, it was incredible. Their version of hospitality is not anything I have seen before. So that's the kind of travel that I think, looking ahead, like, it's hard for me to say, you know, I have no idea where I'm going to be in, you know, a year, even 10 years, 5 years. But I can say that I treasure the people that I have met, that are part of this sort of, and I don't know if it's a new life, but a different life. And we want to find ways to maintain those connections, those communities. So yeah, it was really sobering. I mean, the Istanbul thing, it just was incredible. We haven't felt so cared for and loved in a long time, and we missed it, and it was incredible.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful thing to experience, that human connection in realms,
across cultures.
Across cultures, across people. And it doesn't matter, you know, like where you came from. You can see that, oh, we can connect, even though I don't even know your way of life, and you don't even know where I'm from. But when we come together, it's, you know, it's a celebration, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I remember we were saying our goodbyes. I was saying goodbye to one of the family members, and everyone around us. We were at a ferry station, and we were exchanging gifts, and everyone around us was like staring as they were trying to put it together. Like this clearly loud American, I still have the loudness, I think, with this obviously Turkish person, and we're like, "I love you," crying.
Oh.
So it was really incredible, and I don't know. I think that's something that's hard to quantify. You know, when you talk about traveling and why you like it and why you're willing to keep doing it or to live abroad, even though you're so far from your friends and family back home.
Yeah. Yeah. So in your experience, how do you think that people do find their communities? How do you think that, aside from astrocartography, which I met with somebody I've talked about on the show, who does, like, she looks at your astrology chart and then tells you, so they're called ley lines throughout the world, which tell you, like, this is a auspicious place for you to be at this time for these reasons. So I've been trying to kind of hit on those. And one of them is, for me, is like between LA and San Diego, which I find interesting because I've never thought of living there. I didn't really explore much in the rest of the world because I've been kind of based on the road in the States. But yeah, it's interesting that there's certain pockets and places that might be. Did you get your chart read, and did you find that it is accurate to your travels and your preferences?
I have not. The person I met her virtually in Istanbul when we were sort of going through a fair amount. Our Airbnb had been broken into and we had deaths in the family. So I was like, I will need to circle back with you in a couple of weeks. So I haven't, but I'm interested. I'm certainly interested in hearing what she has to say. And I think it'll be interesting. But you were going to ask something else. You were saying something else that I was going to respond to.
Yeah, well, more so the question, like, let's say you don't use astrocartography. How does one figure out, like, where could my community be? You know, like, where is, if someone has the luxury of being able to uproot themselves and go search for the place rather than, because I think that the thing is that a lot of people just kind of find themselves somewhere and they, you know, unfortunately, I think a lot of life is, we get attached to the jobs we have, the connections we have, which, I mean, it's not unfortunate, but it just kind of keeps us thinking that I need to stay here. This is where my people are. This is where, but then there's those of us, you know, wanderers, travelers, what have you, whatever you might call us, who are kind of out there looking for maybe a place that might be, you know, their place, their community. So how do we identify that?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because here I can speak to both in Lisbon and Istanbul. I know that I sort of travel in these expat circles, and I know that people will often start with Meetup and Internations, those two organizations, to try to find like-minded people. So they'll go to events that match their own personal interests, book clubs, you know, bar nights, brunches, museums. And so they'll try to find people that way. And in Lisbon, that's particularly wonderful because there's so many people from all over the world here that it's just this crazy mix of, so you're bound to meet wonderful people, and it's a small enough place that you will run into people that you've met that could be good, it could be bad. I saw this guy. I was on Tinder for a hot minute, such a short time. And yesterday I happened to be eating and I looked up and I was like, why does that guy look familiar? I wanted to, like, the earth to swallow me up because I had, like, fled without saying anything. Anyway, the point is that people, you know, they will use, like, these groups to find people. But what I found that works for me now is to do the same things that drew me back home. So if I was swimming back home, to pick up swimming again, because then through your actual interest, not just going to some random, this is my personal current belief, not just going to some random, you know, brunch, for example, or some random happy hour, which you could have fun at. But, you know, so I'm following the passions that I knew that I already had. So I love tennis. I love swimming. I love reading new books. So I've joined a book club that meets, I think I forget where they are. I think they're in Sweden. They're in Oslo. And they've got people from all over the world. It started because of COVID, but they've kept it going. So for me, you know, in a writing group that they're based out of Edinburgh, which is awesome. Like the sense
Oh,
of humor is amazing. And
got it.
so that's the way that it feels these days, feels more authentic to me. I remember when COVID is not over, but when we first felt a little bit released from the rules around COVID.
Mm.
I think we were all so desperate for like human interaction that we just
Yeah,
all threw
connection.
ourselves out into the street and started going to random things. And I did that
Totally.
for a while, and I'm like, what am I doing? I hate this. I like this particular activity. I don't like doing. I'm just doing it because I need people around, you know?
Yeah.
So it's been really interesting. So my advice would be just to follow whatever your passions were at home. They don't, assuming they haven't changed when you're on the road, you'll find like-minded people that way. It doesn't matter if you're in Istanbul or Lisbon or
Yeah.
Dublin or
Yeah.
Glasgow.
Well, I think that's also a point to make for those listening who maybe, again, that maybe they don't have the ability to travel and explore is that, and actually the woman I'm staying with made this point because I was saying like, well, I don't know where to go. Maybe I'll go to Oregon. Maybe I'll go out to here, there. And she
Yeah,
said, well, you can go anywhere. And she said, you
yeah,
can build a community anywhere.
yeah.
And I said,
Mhm,
touche, because
mhm.
it's true that, I tend to kind of always be like a seeker and kind of seeking out like where, but like they say, it's your home is where you are, your home is where your heart
Mhm,
is, all those
mhm,
cliches, but they're true, right? There's
mhm.
never going to be this, Shangri-La that's like just, this mecca of everything you ever wanted. There's
No.
going to be work wherever you go to create community.
Yeah, yeah, and I think if you don't stay um true to yourself and the things that you know that you like, and sort of avoiding the things that you know that you don't, then you can feel isolated and alone anywhere, including at home, if if you don't. So it's something that I have to keep reinforcing even for myself, because sometimes I I think I want to be really social and I think I want to go do these things, and I end up at some happy hour and I'm like, this is horrible and I don't want to be here. And I did this to myself. I was on a boat trip that sounded fantastic. It was like a yacht trip in the middle of the river, and I'm like, wait, I'm stuck here on this boat for the next 6 hours.
Yeah.
So you have to
Funny
be
you
true to
mentioned
yourself.
my friend and I were talking the other day about I've been on a cruise once and it's not
Mhm.
my favorite way to travel. Because we're talking just that it's all kind of hyped up and you hear like, oh, cruises, I'm going on this cruise,
Yeah,
and you're like,
it
wow,
sounds
a cruise.
fabulous.
But then you do it and you're just kind of stuck on a big ship for like 6 days. And it's like, I don't
Yeah.
think I want to do that for my vacation with a bunch of random people. I'm just stuck on a ship in the middle of the ocean. Like it's cool for like a
Yeah.
little bit, but then it's like I'm just stuck on here.
Yeah. I know people who love them, but
I
I had a
know it's
similar
interesting.
experience where the thing to talk about at the day was like what was on at the buffet. And I'm like, I like food, but not.
That's always the best thing about the cruises is the buffet. But yeah, you can do a buffet in a
People talk about it like it's like, I'm like, it's still just food. I should shut up because I know I have a friend who loves cruises, and so she's probably
I
cursing
know,
me
right?
right
We're gonna get vilified, but it's
now.
true. But okay, there's another wonderful part of travel is trying new things, right? For those of us who like to explore and try different cuisines and different, arrays of food, it can be so exciting to travel,
Yeah,
see what other people
that's true.
eat and what they have, and all these decadent dishes that we might not have otherwise found.
Yeah. And I think what's really cool too, this is not so related, but to explore different versions of yourself or who you think that
Mm.
you are, And so sometimes I can be really quiet and, I don't necessarily want to talk to people. And in Istanbul, I decided to put on the exterior. You probably think I'm like this all the time, but the exterior of someone who like likes to talk to strangers and is super friendly and says hello all the time. And it was really interesting, the different reactions, being just to strangers in the street. It was really interesting. So
Yeah.
you get to kind of try new things.
Yeah. But I think that's also an interesting component of traveling is how do you stay connected with yourself? How do you stay, because as we're speaking to earlier, when you go to a place that's completely foreign to you and everything feels different, nobody knows you, you don't belong anywhere. I've definitely felt a sense where I kind of lost a sense of myself. I was like, these people respond to me differently. I don't have my people. And I think a big part of our identity is based around our community, our tribe, our people.
Mhm.
And I even had the same experience when I went away to college. Is I had a
Mhm.
great group of friends where I live, but when I went to college, I just didn't connect the same way with those group of people. And I was like, am I not who I thought I was? Am I,
Yeah.
not the same person? But then I'd go back home and I'd feel myself again. So it's important to acknowledge that can happen, and how to find your way back to yourself even when everything around you changes, which is a huge
Yeah.
part of travel.
Yeah, it's true. And sometimes you forget, during the pandemic, I had started a really great routine with exercise, with running. I would get up and run or walk or do Pilates at a certain time every day. I would meditate, I would read. I just had this whole routine that was it was very soothing. And then, when you're kind of back in the swing of things, or even when you're on the road, all of that kind of goes out the window, because you're like, let's wake up early and do this, or let's stay out late and do this. And then you feel off kilter. You're doing these great things, but you might feel off balance. And
Yeah.
it's for me, it's because I realized, oh, I was doing these things before that I've completely dropped now that I'm on the road. And that's why I'm feeling like a little bit not centered.
Yeah, yeah, and it's easy to lose that center. And I've noticed that because again, I've essentially been on the road since October of last
Right.
year, and I spent, I had a brief stint where I spent like a few months in sort of like the Carmel, Santa Cruz area. But
Mm-hmm.
I was still a vagrant, right? I was still moving from place to place,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed that like my eating habits changed, and all these things kind of went by
Yeah.
the wayside that were very important in my day-to-day life before, because before
Mm-hmm.
that I lived in the same studio for 3 years,
Yeah.
and the longest I've ever lived anywhere, because I tend to like to move around. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's harder to maintain consistency when you're changing
Mm-hmm.
all the time on the road.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And particularly if you're by yourself, right? If you're with another person, then that person can provide that sort of reminder or stability. I don't know if stability is the right word, but you know, you can kind of establish like a schedule. But when you're by yourself, often you have a ton of freedom, so you can make choices. Like tonight, I'm gonna stay up until 3 in the morning, and tomorrow I'm gonna you. And so that it feels like, oh, I've got this. I can do anything I want. But then it can be sort of destabilizing if you do that too much, or you don't. You kind of do it in moderation, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you think are some of the other aspects of transformation that can occur for people when they travel and when they're challenged in this way? And as they kind of find the place that they want to be, or at least maybe share your journey in that, what's been your transformational experience in going from like sort of going all over the place to finding a new home base in another country? What were your stages of transformation?
Yeah, it's been such a journey. I don't even know where to start, to tell you the truth. I think that all of the challenges that I keep referencing really can change you, because your response to them. And so, even so, for example, I bought my home here in 2018, when I was still moving back and forth between here and San Francisco. And this is my first home purchase. And I think there was something exciting about it. And I actually had to act quickly because the prices, I was like, so I didn't actually think about what that would mean. And so you can imagine being a first time home buyer at home, right? In a culture that you're used to. But then I didn't think about the ramifications of doing, I don't know why I didn't, the ramifications of doing that overseas in a culture where I didn't, I at the time, barely spoke the language, all the challenges that you would have, that are normal challenges that you would have at home in buying a new place, furnishing the place, getting people to help you, figuring out how to make repairs, when the boiler goes out, all of these things that are all very normal everyday things suddenly take on an entirely new dimension when you're in a different culture. Like, I didn't even, something as small as in August, we are in August now. In August, you can pretty much give up on trying to do much. of anything or to have anybody do anything for you because people are basically on holiday.
Oh, okay. So they in Lisbon particularly?
Yeah, in Portugal. It's like
Oh.
August is the holiday month. So
Good for you all. That's a great practice. Jeez,
Yeah,
I wish the United States would take a month off here.
it's just crazy. So there are people in the streets, but like there was a furniture street when I first came here that I went to go check it out in August and all of the places on the road, every single one was like, catch us in September. Not like catch us in a week, catch us
You're like,
tomorrow.
but I need this now.
Yeah, there's none of that.
That's great. I mean, you talk about, so here's another word, adaptability, that relates a lot to travel, because I'll admit, you know, as an American, you know, born, raised,
you expect
right now. I remember I spent a summer in Peru when I was in college, and you would like go to take a bus and it just wouldn't show up. And I was like, how does this work? The bus is supposed to be here. And it's like, yeah, but the driver was taking us, you know, a break, and he spent the day by the river. And like, it's like things don't operate the way in America. You can pretty much rely on things being, because it's so competitive, and we have this mentality of like, you know, the customer first, and always like meet expectations, which is
24/7 and money. Like if you get locked out of your house, you will be able to find someone at 1 a.m. who will come and get you back in.
Yeah. So talk about like, you know, adapting to changes. You go to other countries and you have to be like, well, I guess I'm going to wait to buy a home until next month because stuff is shut down. Or like, well, I guess I'm not going to get this new, you know, renovation because nobody's working right now. And that's okay. And I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy learn.
It's very healthy.
Yeah. Anyone
but challenging.
It is challenging. It isn't challenging, but being so used to immediate, you know, having your needs met and having things right at your, you know, fingertips it spoils us and also makes us a little bit impatient. And, you know, that's, I mean,
patience is a good thing that you learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone who's traveled to other countries will see that. And they'll say, again, the eye-opening nature of travel, it makes you say, oh, not everywhere is like my place where I've known. It's not all the same. And that's important, I think.
Yeah. And, you know, and it really depends on where you go, because again, in Istanbul, it's a huge city. I keep hearing figures. It's between 16 and 20 million, and it's a city. So, but it's super safe, you know, very safe, but it is a go. Like if you miss a bus, the next one is 30 seconds behind, like the next 5. There's no like waiting. I felt like I was in New York, like a safe New York, safe, historical, much older New York. I mean, I shouldn't do that. They're completely different places, but
you
it was
felt that similarity in your experience.
It did. And so then when I moved back to Portugal in the middle of August from that place, I was like, I felt like I was in a Western, was expecting like tumbleweeds. So like, the streets are more empty. I'm like, where is everybody? What is happening? And I'm like, oh, it's August.
Yeah. How funny.
Super fun. All of this is in good fun. I am not complaining in any way, shape, or form. It's just kind of
no, absolutely. It's observations. It's, you know, experiential times where you're recognizing, okay, this is different. This is shifting, and again, it's growing pains and challenges when you first go to these places. But then, as you're experiencing, you said again, it's your home now, so it can become familiar. And I think that people can be resistant to change because that first wave, the first hump can be very steep, where it's like, this is never going to feel right. This is never going to feel comfortable. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is better than what I ever knew before.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the fact that the world is changing so much, or has changed since the pandemic, so that more people are remote, or at least open to the idea of being remote or trying to find a way to work remotely, means that you meet more people who are likely to have had your experiences, even if it's not the exact same. So then you don't feel so alone, or you don't feel that it's such a challenge, because you feel like, oh, there are all these other people who have this experience of dislocation, like purposeful dislocation, and who are going through similar things. So that's really comforting too. Like I was just talking or texting with a woman who I met in Istanbul. She's from Malaysia. I thought she lived there permanently. She's on her way back to Malaysia now. So we were talking about, you know, choosing to be between places, and so it was really interesting to hear her talk about, you know, what her journey, and it's just really interesting.
It is fascinating people you meet, fascinating times you have when you explore new places.
Yeah.
Well, Eleanor, what are some other, how can we help you with No Sister Stands Alone as you develop this, as you grow this? Is there something the audience can check out? When do you think these groups will be running? Sort of like these wine and.
I would love, I'm building my list right now. So I'm always looking for, first I have a page, travelclubforwomen.com, like spelled out that way. So anyone who's interested can go to the page and sign up. I have these travel guides that are free
can you tell us about that a little bit? Like what's offered on that site?
So I talked about, you know, tips for traveling, living, and moving, living and studying abroad, tips for each of those 3 different scenarios, all in 3 different guides that you get all at once. And they're basically things that I learned the hard way that I want people to think about before they book the ticket and, you know, and move somewhere or travel somewhere, that I hope will be helpful. They're just little things that once you become an experienced traveler, you will know, for example, that you will never leave the airport in a new place without buying a local SIM card. Like you can buy it elsewhere, but you should buy it in the airport so that you can change your SIM and have Wi-Fi wherever you go. So tips like that. So I'm building this community, and I'm looking for women who are experienced travelers or who live in different parts of the world and have had some of these experiences so that they can share those experiences with others. Because what I would like is to build a community of people. I use the word seekers, but it's not just seekers. It's people who have taken action or are about to or want to. We're very serious about exploring a different possibilities, different, you know, ways of living, so that they can be a resource for others. Because again, I think there are travel groups. This is not what I'm envisioning is not necessarily like a group of people who we do like trips to random places, because those exist and I think they're wonderful. You know, it'd be great to be able to join those, but you could be at home, you know, in the United States and be dreaming about doing these things, but be part of a community long before you've actually decided to move or to travel that has the support system. So I'll give you an example. I was traveling for work a very long time ago, right after college. And I forget, I don't know if I was in the US Virgin Islands, and I was it was a work trip. So I had gone to meet some folks at the school, and when I got back to my rental car, which is parked in broad daylight in the middle of town, it was on blocks. Somebody had taken all the wheels. And
oh my gosh.
I remember I circled around the car and I'm like, is this my car? I didn't recognize it. I'm like, no, because it had only been like an hour of broad daylight. And obviously I solved the problem. I called the rental company. But can you imagine? I was by myself at the time. Imagine being able to have an app or a connection where you could say, "Hey, this funny thing happened to me." You could say, "Hey, this ideas, etc." I just think it would be really great.
Yeah, absolutely. Because now I'm thinking about like what I'm doing now. Right now, I'm trying to decide, okay, do I go further east or do I wrap back around west and go down the coast because I'm headed towards Texas for a few events in September. And it'd be nice to be able to like field out a question like, hey, has anybody been out to this place in Idaho? Is it worth checking out? Is there nice places to see? Do I want to go to Twin Falls or no? Can I miss it? So just kind of that community where you can talk to other women who are like-minded, right? Who like I would love to talk to people who are also sort of spiritually inclined, because then they can be like, oh, you got to check out this mountain or this river because it's like very sacred and gorgeous and you'll love it, you know?
Like, and to even meet people who are in those places, you know, like you might change your destination if you knew that someone in your community was, you know, on Vancouver Island, for example, or also wanted to, because so often our friends, or friends and family, they may not be into the same things that you're into. So it might be hard to find that person who wants to do exactly the same thing that you want to do, or who wants to go climb that mountain. And I think it would be really nice to have a community. And also it's different to be able, for example, I have people who, like friends of friends, who know that I'm here. And so they're like, oh, call up Eleanor and ask her these 20 questions. And I will tell you, I'm less invested in having those conversations, because the kind of information that people are asking me, it's information that can be readily accessed online. So it's not that I don't want to talk to people, but I don't know you. And if I think that I'm going to spend, X amount of time talking to you, and then I'm never going to hear from you again.
Yeah.
I am less invested in that conversation. So what I'm saying is, I would love to build a community where people feel invested, because they're part of an ongoing relationship, a give and take relationship, where you're not only taking, but you're also giving, you're sharing with other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you and I have that in common, and sort of our focus and our vision for what we want to create. Because I'm very much also about being a connector, bringing people together, sharing resources, sharing gifts, sharing, offerings for one another, that we're all sort of, okay, oh, you have this, I have this, we can exchange, we can help each other. And then we work together. Yeah. But then it's also just about human connection, the connection, the bond of traveling and sharing stories, but also the connection and bond of, relating to one another and getting to know, like, oh, wow, there's other people out here that I can have this network. Because I was just talking in my last podcast about, the epidemic of loneliness. And, it's when you feel like you're out there on your own, especially when you're traveling, you can get sunk into that bog of loneliness. But when you're connecting with people and saying like, hey, look at, I went to this place, it was beautiful. And people say, oh, I've been there too. And this human connection is, invaluable. It's just, and unfortunately, so often in our society, we kind of push that aside. I think, especially in the United States, it's sort of like, we're on our own mission, just focus on the prize and do your own thing. But, that's missing the whole aspect of life, which is, again, connection, collaboration, community.
Exactly. Connection, collaboration, community. I want to move beyond a sort of purely transactional, I have information and you need information. Not to say that that's a very valid thing, obviously. But I think on the road, what you want when you're living, you're traveling, you're building a new life, what you need is something like that's more of a sort of circular sort of sharing economy, in terms of friendship, real friendship and community, and the sharing of gifts. So I think I've seen and tasted glimpses of it. I have women, as you do, sort of in my circle, who are fantastic, doing completely different things, but who really want to connect on this level. And I think that the more we sort of spread the word and encourage people to kind of think about how that works. People are really busy and are living their own lives. So, hey, I don't slight people for just trying to, get things done, but I'm trying to move away from that.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think what you speak to, and I think what you're speaking to now, is the idea of, kindred spirits, right? It's more than just like, what do we have to offer each other? It's like, let's come together. Like when you discussed about this family that you met in Istanbul, it sounds like kindred spirits, where you're just like, oh, I'm just so excited to be united with you and to share this, this special experience and bonding with somebody. And that's what it's really about, is bringing people together. I think there are part of our tribe. There are our people. There are kindred souls, and
that can be across age ranges, it's just, I think it can be really incredible. And I guess, I don't know if I can blame this on the pandemic, but I just hadn't seen that in the 3 years here. I have friends here, certainly. I believe that I have a community here, but we connected on a different level. And I felt that, they brought out parts of me that I didn't even know that, I don't know, that I felt like they were lost, or it was just different. I'm not from a big family, my immediate family is not big, and they're from this like big crazy, they were joking, they're like, we're like this big crazy Greek family, but we're Turkish, we're going to force feed you and we're going to give you strong opinions. And that's the kind of thing that I thought I would eat. And I loved it. I'm like, oh, you're trying to force feed me because you love me. You're piling on and it just was really lovely. It was lovely. And I don't know that I would have that experience if I wasn't sort of operating outside of my sort of homey, comfortable sort of cultural context. I don't know. Maybe I would have, maybe.
Well, all we know is that you found it and it was delightful. And what a beautiful thing that is.
Yeah.
And again, that's what happens when you take the risk and you overcome the challenges and you go for the journey, that traveling, and you can seek new lands, new experiences. And it's quite remarkable.
Yeah. And I think when I think about people, who are home, who are thinking, I don't know if I can do this. Like, first, I don't know if I can swing the finances. Second, it sounds challenging, because we talked a lot on this call about challenges, and for it that sounds daunting, but the good, the amazingness on the other side of that too is something that we can't forget to talk about, because it's really hard to describe the feeling of, it's not just accomplishment, but the feeling that you get when you've decided to step out of your comfort zone, or just to do something that you've always wanted to do, just one thing. Yep. And then you actually do it, even through, the mess and the hardship and the tears and the sweat, like I've been so hot this summer, but people here were so much hotter here in Lisbon and Portugal. It was hotter here, hotter in Western Europe. We had a pretty cool summer. But, the challenges, I'm climbing up a hill. I don't know where I'm going. I know nobody's going to speak to me in my language. And despite all of that, I'm like, oh, this is really cool,
Yeah.
So I just want I want to encourage people who are, at home and trying to figure out like how to make ends meet. Like, you can still have those worries overseas as well, but that it's entirely possible and doable with help, with resources, and that there are people who are doing it, and our lives aren't perfect, but certainly the challenges are completely worth it. I have zero regrets, and my life has not been easy here. Not easy. But
what a wonderful place to be. What a wonderful place, and inspiring to share that and be able to say that, because I think people need to hear that it is possible to reach a place in your life where, despite your troubles and tribulation, you can say, not a regret in sight. It's all, I see now how it all led me here, played a part in my growth.
Yeah. All the bad things that happened this summer led to amazing things. I mean, directly led. There was a bad thing. We got broken into, our house got broken into, and then this professional connection became a family connection. They were like, leave that place and move in with us tomorrow. And they just happened to live on this magical island. I'm like, wait, what? I'm not kidding you. On that island, I had second thoughts about my whole life. I'm like, well, I invested time in Portugal, but maybe it's just time to pack it up. And
I was tempted.
I had some of those moments, but it just is interesting that out of complete terribleness, we had a death in the family one day, the second day after we arrived, and that earlier in that day had been like the best day of our lives, because they'd taken us around, and it's like the yin and yang of it all, So
that balancing, and it's when you can sort of roll with it and ride it, and just
resilience. We didn't really talk about resilience, but I think that's underlying what we're talking about too, is how you build resilience when you're for you, on the road, for me trying to do different things. Yeah, you're all about resilience. You have to be resilient to do what you're doing,
Yeah, learning to get knocked down and stand up again and say, well, this, because I think, sometimes it's easy to be like, well, this isn't going to work out, so I'll just go home. But if you're out there on the road and you still got, a whole thousands of miles ahead, it's like, nope, got to figure this out, got to fix it. I was driving at one point I think it was between like Arizona and New Mexico or somewhere out there in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And all of a sudden my car is doing fine. And then I hear that dreaded sound of like, what the fuck is happening?
I know.
Is my car going to break down in the desert?
Yeah.
It'd be like a $5,000 tow to get me anywhere. And I pull over and it was, the undercarriage had fallen down. And so I pulled into like it was actually off Route 66. And there just happened to be this small little town with like 3 mechanics. And one of them was like, oh, we can just tie it up with a little like zip tie and you'll be on your way. But I was, for a second, like we said, you're alone. You're like, hello, anybody help me? And it's like, it's just like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with this scary noise. But yeah, resilience. Cause then you get through. Yeah, I did it. I can do this. I can handle it.
Yeah. And before that, maybe that's the kind of thing. I mean, it's the kind of thing that might be terrifying in the moment, but before you took a trip like that, at home, it might've been the kind of thing that would have undone you. It would have been like, I can't handle this. Someone else come fix this, but like you said, when you're on the road and you have to sort of adapt and you have to figure it out. I can relate to, what you're saying, particularly about the road trip, being in the middle of nowhere. I just sort of assumed that I would be in cell phone service of AAA everywhere I went on my road trip. I was in the middle of Wyoming once. And I hadn't had cell service. I was on the highway, but I hadn't had cell service in, I don't know, a very long time. And I thought to myself, oh, I haven't seen a gas station. Oh, like this could, if something happened, I would kind of be.
Yeah, you try to think about it too much. You're like, just keep going. Let's just keep, but it's all ends up fine, and it's gorgeous out there where there's no. And how nice to not have self service for a while.
Yeah. So anyway, I can relate to what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Resilience is a huge part. There are just so many benefits to travel, and it truly is a part of a broader transformation that we can go through by opening ourselves to new things, new people, new places.
Yeah, I really like the word transformation. I think it's bigger than change. It's not just change.
Yeah,
it's moving into something new.
Metamorphosis, right? It's that transitioning from who you were into who you're becoming. And always.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see, what the people who I know, like if I leave and go somewhere else, like what they will think. I feel like I'm a different person. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I certainly feel.
Oh, I'm sure it's good. I'm sure. Go back to the Bay. I'll be here what it feels like for you. If it feels different and how people respond to you, if they're like, whoa, wow.
Yeah. When you're away, one thing I'd been working on is boundaries, like setting boundaries that I just was not good at doing before. And so that might not be, we'll see how people react to that.
You don't want to do it all, but hey, you've discovered yourself in that way, and that growth, transforming.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Eleanor. Well, this has been such a wonderful, beautiful conversation. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the community and the club that you're creating for all of us to join in on and to collaborate with others, fellow travelers, fellow seekers.
Yeah, thank you, Whitney. It's been really wonderful. It's been so fun. We're fun. We've had a great time here. So
I back, maybe in a year or so, and maybe who knows where you'll be then, and where your travels have gone, and where how No Sister Stands Alone has evolved, and we want to be there to help you. So we'll include all the links for that in the show notes so people can check you out and connect with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, Eleanor.
You too. Bye.